I spent a long time telling my story as evidence of everything that had gone wrong. What I lost, what was taken from me, what the divorce cost me, what he did, what the years cost, the version of my future that was gone. I told it to my friends. I told it to my family. I told it to God in prayer. And at night, when the house was quiet and no one was asking, I told it to myself. And I thought that was honesty. I thought I was finally seeing things clearly. What God showed me is that every time I told my story that way, I was leaving him out of it. Not on purpose, but completely. And today, I want to show you how to tell the version that is still honest and gives him back what is his. Hi, welcome to Beyond Believing. I am Katie Ann. Whether you tell your story out loud to your friends, to your family, to your children, to the people in your life who ask you how you are, or whether you mostly tell it to yourself in the quiet moments when the grief comes back, this episode is for you. Today, I am going to show you why the shape of your story matters more than you may have realized, and what changes when you finally include the part you have been leaving out. Let's go. After my divorce, I had a story. It was a good one. And I told it often with detail, with honesty, with the full weight of what had actually happened. The marriage that had not been what I had hoped. The years that had cost me more than I could count. The divorce that ended not just a marriage, but a version of who I thought I was. Who I thought my family would be. What my children's home would look like. What love was supposed to mean. All of it was real to me. Every word of it was true to me. I was not exaggerating and I was not performing. But the story had a very particular shape. It started with what happened to me, and it moved through what I lost. And it ended with what it cost. And here is what I did not notice for a very long time. Every time I told that story, every time I walked back through what happened and what was taken and what it cost, I felt it all over again. The weight of what it would settle back into my chest, the injustice of it would sit heavy. The sense that life had been done to me rather than lived through me. That the story was something that had happened, not something God was writing, would come back fresh. And I kept telling it because it was true, because I needed to be understood, because processing it felt more important. And I thought that was what healing looked like. But I want to ask you something about the story you are telling. When you describe your divorce, when you explain what happened, what you lost, what it has cost you, who is the center of that story? Is it the pain, the loss, the ex, the years, the life that did not happen the way you planned? Or is it God? Because here is what I finally had to face. A story that begins and ends with what was done to you, however true it is, has no room for what God has done through it. And when he is not in the story, when what happened to you is the center and he is a footnote or an afterthought, that story is diminishing something. And God showed me what it was diminishing. I want to tell you something about the word victim that I think is going to change how you understand this entire conversation. The word victim comes from the Latin word victima. It means a sacrificial offering. And the original victim, in the deepest theological sense of that word, was Christ himself. He was the sacrificial offering, the Lamb of God, the one who was betrayed by someone he had chosen, falsely accused by people who knew better, publicly humiliated, abandoned by almost everyone he loved, and put to death for something he did not do. And if there was ever a person in history who had the right to tell a victim story, it is him. But I want you to notice how he went to that cross. In John 10, verses 17 and 18, it says, "The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life. only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. No one takes it from me. I lay it down of my own accord. He says, I have authority over this. He was not helpless. He was not a passive victim of what was being done to him. He walked into it willingly, in full control of his circumstances, with full knowledge of what was coming and full authority over the outcome. Theologians call this Christus Victor, the triumph of Christ over the powers of this world, through which he rescues his people and establishes something entirely new. He used what was done to him for the redemption of the entire world. And his spirit, the very same spirit, lives in you, which means the story of your divorce is not just a story of what was done to you. It is a story of what God is doing through you, if you will tell it that way. Proverbs 23:7 says, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Not as things happen to him, so is he. Not as people treat him, so is he. Not as circumstances dictate, so is he. As he thinks." Which means the story you tell about your divorce, in your prayers, in your conversations to yourself at night, is not just a description of what happened. It is producing who you are becoming. If the center of your story is what was done to you, the divorce, the betrayal, the loss, the years, that story is producing a woman whose identity is organized around what she survived rather than who carried her through it. And there is nothing wrong with having survived something hard, but surviving is not the same as being transformed. And a story centered on the wound rather than the one who was in the wound with you is diminishing the grace of God in your life, not on purpose, but completely. I want to show you what the different story looks like, not as a formula, not as a performance, but as a question you can carry, because the facts of your story do not change. The divorce happened, the pain was real, what you lost was real, the impact on your children, your finances, your identity, your sense of what your future held, all of that stands. I am not asking you to pretend otherwise. I am asking you to look at the same story and find what you have been leaving out. 3 questions to carry with you for this week. First, what has God built through this that would not exist if this had not happened? Not in spite of it, through it. What clarity, what closeness to him, what depth of faith, what has he produced in you through the fire of this season that did not exist before? Second, what have you walked through that you did not walk through alone? Look back over the hardest moments, the day the papers came, the first Christmas, the handoff that broke you. Who was in those moments with you? Was he not there? Third, what has he shown you about who he is from the inside of this? Not from a sermon or a book, but from your own lived experience of his faithfulness when everything else failed. That is the whole truth. Oswald Chambers writes, "The river of the Spirit of God overcomes all obstacles." Never focus your eyes on the obstacle or the difficulty. The obstacle will be a matter of total indifference to the river that will flow steadily through you if you will simply remember to stay focused on the source. The obstacle is the divorce, the loss, what was done to you, what it cost you. The river is the Spirit of God. And when the river is flowing, when he is the center of the story rather than a footnote, the obstacle becomes, as Chambers says, a matter of total indifference. Not invisible, not minimized, but no longer the point. Who is the source in your story? God doesn't need you to be the heroine of your story. He needs you to be the witness of it. A witness tells the whole truth, not just the pain, but the provision, not just what was taken, but what was given in its place, not just the obstacle, but the river that moved through it and came out on the other side. You are not the sum of what happened to you. You are not defined by your divorce. You are not who your ex said you were. You are not the woman who failed her marriage. You are not what the hardest season of your life tried to make you believe about yourself. You are what God has been building through all of it. And He is not finished building. Stop calling yourself a victim of your story and start telling the truth about who has been in it with you. Because that story, the whole one, with Him at the center, is the most powerful thing you have. And it is not just for you. It is for every woman who is going to need to hear what God can do through the things she is most afraid to survive. One question for you to focus on this week. Where has God shown up for you in your story that you have not yet given Him credit for? It does not have to be a big moment. It does not have to be obvious. Just one place, one moment where you can look back and say, He was in that. And I left Him out when I told the story. That is where you start. And this is the work that I do in my coaching. Not to be the answer, but to point you to the one who is, to remind you that you have access to everything you truly desire and to help you begin living like it today. If that conversation is one you are ready to have, you can apply for coaching at coachkatieann.com/call. The link is in the show notes. And next week, I want to show you the specific tool that makes everything we have been talking about in this actually work in your daily life. The one God used to completely change how I understood why I kept experiencing the same things over and over. You're going to want to be there. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you then.